So welcome to the podcast, Jeff. How are you doing today?
Doing so well. So good to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you back here on the podcast. And we talked, I believe it was last year. I feel like it's been a while. You obviously been doing a lot of great things with modern engineering and all the things that you have going on. So definitely a person that I looked up to and just kind of follow online and social media. It was great to just connect again.
Yeah, well, I'm excited and I love everything that you're doing with engineering our future and everything too. So it's exciting to reconnect here and chat again.
Yeah, thanks. Something I just wanted to talk about is kind of during this season, kind of end of the year, beginning of the year, is reviews. It's something that I have really thought about a lot in 2021, obviously with everything kind of happening. Um, kind of, we all heard about all the people resigning from jobs, finding new careers, and how we kind of involve ourselves into a consistent kind of review process and kind of the importance of that. So let's just start with that. Like, why is it important for us as engineers and young professionals or students that are listening to this to really have a consistent kind of review process? And this doesn't necessarily have to be within the team or a company. I'm just talking about you sit down with yourself, ask yourself a set of questions every week or every month on how to move towards those goals. Why is that important in our careers?
Yeah, there's a few different things that we might point to when we're looking at review, or another word you might use is introspection,
Mhm.
or in an office scenario, some companies will talk about retrospectives or after action reviews, or we have performance reviews or different things like this. There are a lot of different flavors of it, right? Um, but I think one of the biggest things that any sort of review or reflection brings to us is awareness.
Mhm.
Increasing the awareness of where we're at today, the progress that we've made, which I think a lot of times we dismiss or don't take a look at, and we can talk about that some more. And then, where do we want to continue working? Is the balance of our time focused on the things that are most important to us and going to lead towards our goals? Are the goals that we set forth earlier still the right ones that we still care about? It's okay to let go of some goals if we recognize they weren't actually the right ones for us. But um, and so any sort of reflection is going to bring that awareness of how things are going, and increase our ability to recognize when we need to make some changes, which then gives us that opportunity to make those changes and take action appropriately. So it brings that awareness, which then feeds into what are the right actions we can take after that. I think is the biggest purpose I've found with any sort of review process.
Yeah, that's I found something similar. I don't know if you do something like weekly or monthly or what, but for me, I try to do kind of on a day to day basis, just kind of track some of the things that I'm doing, either like exercise or just kind of keep track of or a log of kind of some habits I'm trying to either to develop or just track to see how that relates to other things in my life, and then I just kind of keep a journal of relevant things that happened during that day, just kind of very casual, just kind of recording things, getting in the habit of as engineers is a very important habit to have, just to kind of record what's happening and just have a well documented document. And then on a weekly and monthly is more of that reflection. Okay, what happened this past week? Just have a set of questions that I like to answer for myself, like what's great about this week, what can be improved, and kind of give me a place where I either reflect on the week and look forward for what's coming next, as well as kind of reset some of my like inbox on my email or like Google Drive to have like photos that need to be transferred, just kind of cleaning up everything to start the week fresh. And I do kind of that a weekly and a monthly again. What are the things that you personally do? I know last time we spoke, you were big on journaling and kind of
Mhm.
reflecting. And I'm kind of curious, how has that evolved, as well as maybe some other practices you've done for like your personal reviews, and how has that helped you in your career?
Yeah, so there are a few different things, and obviously there are all sorts of different systems that people or approaches that people could do. It's about looking at those ideas and finding what works for you. And it sounds
Mhm.
like the systems that we use are fairly similar. So I have a log that I create on a monthly basis that tracks a lot of those daily daily things, but I have a monthly view of it on one sheet that I take a look at. But each day has its own thing, and I track things like you said, exercise, and some of the things around how I eat and physical characteristics, things around meditation or spiritual work that are important to me. Um, things are, and then other habits that I identify that I want to be doing. Also, like, did I get to sleep before a certain time? And those different, and what was the quality of sleep? Is you and I both have young children. Sometimes it's interesting to see how that goes up and down. And sometimes we need to make some other adjustments, and that's just how it goes. So that's just kind of the habit things that I'm trying to put into place. Because when we're talking about goals, there are two different types of goals. There's kind of habit goals that we're trying to do on a regular basis, which could be every day or a few times a week or on a month, depending on what that is, and you're wanting to keep that going. And there's also achievement goals, like I want to achieve this thing by this time, right? And those are different styles of goals that we might be wanting to bring in. So that helps me in particular with my habit goals and the things I want to be doing and tracking on a regular basis. And then also, I do a journaling. I still am pretty solid on my journaling practice where I try and do a journaling reflection in the morning around creating an intention for what I want that day to look like, the things that are most important for me to focus on. And that's more about setting my mental state. And it's really only 2 or 3 minutes. But it just allows me to reflect and look at, okay, this is what I want to do today. And then at the end of the day, a similar thing. These are the things that happened, kind of a self-evaluation thing. And also just recording, some of the fun family or personal moments or the realizations that I had, and also weaving in some gratitudes, which I think
Mhm.
are critical there. Couple other things that I use on a daily basis. I have a friend that I use as an accountability partner. Okay. So we send each other a text on a daily basis that says, these are the 3 things that I want to get done today. These are the most important things that I want to accomplish. And then the next day, we report on that. Hey, I did 1 out of those 3 things, 2 out of those 3 things. I did 3 out of those 3 things. And then here's my things for today. So it's an
Mhm.
accountability thing, which paired with usually those things are already lined up in my journal or to-do list or other things for that day. And when I share that, it means that I'm being accountable external to myself. And I actually track that metric on a daily basis. And so allows me to help there. Final thing I'll say that I also do right now on a quarterly basis um, is do a reflection. This is based on a principle from someone I learned from called, his name's Benjamin Hardy. Originally, the principle comes from Dan Sullivan, who's the founder of Strategic Coach, and they
Mhm.
co-authored a book that came out this last year called The Gap in the Gain. Um, but the whole principle is that so often we focus so much of our thinking and thought processes on the gap, the difference between where I am right now and where I wish I was, like this ideal that I wish was true, instead of, and that gets us in this feeling of being in like scarcity or lack. We're always feeling like we're not meeting our expectations where we wish we were.
Mhm.
The other side of that, and what they're trying to help us understand, is we also need to be focusing on, or focusing more on the gain, the difference between where we are now and where we used to be,
Mhm.
measuring backwards the progress. So if you had a certain goal, let's say you didn't reach all the way there, but did you make any progress? Did you learn any lessons along the way as you tried things? Did you meet people along the way? Whatever those wins or those successes, the progress you made. So I do a journaling exercise on a quarterly basis. Only takes me about a half an hour, where I look at 3 different time scales: the last 30 days, the last 90 days, and the last year, reflecting on just only focusing on the gains,
Mhm.
the wins, the things the things I've learned, the great people I've met, um, the goals I've achieved, the progress towards any goals that I haven't achieved. And it's one of the I would say that's one of the most powerful exercises that I use that can help me pull out of this feeling of kind of self-loathing and imposter syndrome, or not sure if I'm actually making any progress, and actually recognize that and get in this feeling of there's a lot of great stuff going on and there's a lot to be grateful for, because I spent these last few minutes identifying all of those things. And I'm amazed by how much I was able to put forward, even in times where I didn't feel like going into it that I was
Mhm.
going to be able to identify much. So those are some of the regular systems. And again, I do that on a quarterly basis, but sometimes I'll do it ad hoc if I need a little uh, morale boost too.
Yeah, and all of those practices are super important. And that kind of the last thing that you mentioned reminds me of the book Atomic Habits by James
Mhm.
Clear. And it's not of I want to work out to lose 10 pounds, because once you either achieve that goal or fall off track, you're going to feel demotivated and just kind of lose fall off track. But instead, you want to become the person that goes to the gym 2 days a week, or 3 days a week, or 5 days a week, and
Mhm.
focus on like the process, the system to get you to that specific goal, rather than like focusing so hard on that ultimate outcome. Like, for
Right.
example, I'm not looking to grow the podcast to a million subscribers or a million listeners, just because. But instead, I want to become the person that posts an episode every single week and stays consistent. And obviously, I want to see a growth in the number of subscribers. But ultimately, that's not my goal. My goal is not to become famous on podcasting. My goal is to publish every week and find people that are interested, and with that will come more people that become interested in the podcast, and more people that hopefully are enjoying and really listening and taking value out of the podcast.
Right.
Um,
And you
uh,
look at all of the other ancillary benefits of doing that regularly.
mhm,
That means that every week you're having a fun conversation with someone that, about topics that are interesting to you. That's
right.
improving your network. You're learning new skills. You're getting insights that are going to help you in other ways that may be hard to measure. But
Hmm.
this thing that is easy to measure, this consistency, this goal for you, is going to have benefits beyond just the podcast itself, but in so
Right.
many other ways. And I think that's something to look at in many of the goals of our lives. Also being able to recognize and look back at how any progress toward those goals helped us grow and learn and develop, personally and professionally.
Right. And I know the second part of that was the importance of just looking at the metric of growth rather than looking at how short we fell from a goal. Like that's this
Mhm.
is something I read from Joe Maxwell, which is a great author, and they have an amazing podcast as well. It's just looking at the metrics in terms of, okay, did I grew 10% this year, or did I grew 20% this year? Rather than like I set a goal of $1 million of revenue this year, but I only did 800. But last year I did 300,000. um, what's the growth? What's that metric that we're looking for? We're always looking to improve ourselves, even if it's 1% every year. We're looking to improve and consistently become someone that is doing these great things and are trying to achieve more than the previous year, the previous week, the previous day. Um, the importance of doing these reviews, I feel like, is that it translates well into kind of what I took next, which is the performance review at a company or with a
Mhm.
team. Um, because as you reflect often about the things you're doing, you have a better perspective coming into these reviews rather than just coming in and have no idea what's happening, where you've been, and where you're going. So let's talk about a little bit about the more performance side of things with the company. And I know you do a lot of coaching, a lot of just strategic planning and everything. What should a young engineer, a student, have in mind before going into one of these reviews?
So, a lot of different things that we could be talking about here, but thinking about, your mindset and how open minded you are to the whole
Hmm.
process, right? So you want to set up yourself for success to make this be as useful for you and the company as a whole as possible. Because if you go into a review situation, whether that's on a team thing or a performance review that, sometimes they happen here at the beginning of the year, as we look back on the previous year. Every company has their different cycle time.
Hmm.
But if you go into this with your guard up, or only thinking about yourself and what you want to get out of this, like, hey, I want to make sure and put on the best face so I can get the best review, so I can get a bonus or get a promotion or whatever that is. If that's all you're thinking about, it's probably not going to go as successfully. Okay, we need to be thinking about things outside of ourselves and how we fit into the larger picture. Okay. Now that said, you still want to identify the things that are important, the things you want to learn. Um, there, it's important to advocate for yourself appropriately in certain situations, and this is an opportunity to do that and make sure that it is known the accomplishments that you have made, which may not be immediately apparent to your direct supervisor or others. And so, because if you don't tell them, no one else probably is going to. And also make
Mhm.
known the goals that you have and the direction you want to take your career. Because the more that they understand that, the better they can help and guide you through that process. And you can understand if they have the ability to help you through that. And if not, then we can start looking at other options. And if we need to make a career transition or something, right? Um, so it's this weird balance between identifying the things that are important and self advocating appropriately, while also recognizing it's not just about you, but there's a bigger picture at play, and you're one piece of that in the team or the organizational context. And that's looking at that from the perspective of the engineer.
Mhm.
For those who are leaders who are evaluating and bringing people in, that's a complete different responsibility, where they have an immense responsibility to make these review opportunities a safe place. And that starts not just from the review, but that's an everyday thing, from the types of conversations that you're having with people, from your openness to receive criticism yourself. Um, and actually, I would recommend a review situation is not just all about you telling the person what they've done well or what they haven't done well, but you also having that review opportunities as an opportunity for you to get feedback yourself. And
Mhm.
hopefully, if you're doing things right and being open with your employees and the people you're working with, anything that comes in a formal review conversation should not be a surprise to anyone, because you've already been working on those things eh, throughout time and the things you're working on together.
Yeah, something that stuck to me, and something that our company does is at the performance review is an analysis of obviously the employee. This says like when I come into the performance review, but more so also the company. How's the company doing? How's the company
Mm-hmm.
supporting that employee to achieve the goals? And I like that. Uh, Last year was kind of my first performance review like ever. I didn't really have any previous companies. It was a conversation of like, here's where the company's going, here's what we're doing, we're growing, this is our plan for 10, 15 years down the road. Now
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about you. How do you fit into that plan? What are you doing good right now? And how can we use your skills to help us get to where we want to go? And I thought that
Yeah.
was a really interesting perspective, rather than just focusing on the employee, what they're doing good, what they're doing maybe not so good. Is more of a comprehensive analysis of, here's the company, here's where our values, our goals are. Let's work together towards that ultimate goal of growing the company, or bringing more revenue, and etc. So I think that was a really interesting perspective that I haven't really seen before or heard of before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Um,
really like that, because what it does is it helps every employee see
mhm,
their work and the importance of that in the context of the bigger picture. Because
right.
sometimes it's hard. I mean, if you're working on physical things, um, sometimes when I've done some house projects around the house or whatever, if I replace some things on my deck or if I paint a wall, it's very easy for me to visually see the progress I've made. Sometimes as knowledge workers or engineers, it's not always easy for us to actually physically see and recognize the progress, but actually seeing progress is one of the most important factors in motivating
Mhm,
people through that. So creating that context for how we and the purpose of our role and the importance of that in the context of the bigger picture, being able to see how we've been able to move things in the progress of the whole company, not just in our small little world, whatever that is at the time, is a really motivating factor, and it helps people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves,
Yeah, and
and
not only
builds
that,
a cooperative culture.
right, and not only that, but each engineering project it's so different from the other. So it's like kind of hard to compare a single project to a different one.
Yeah,
Um, so it's just it's complicated to like have a direct analysis between your performance in one project to another project, and
yeah,
I always struggle even myself to kind of see if I'm making actual progress in the way I'm performing calculations, the way I'm managing time, just because they're so different, so challenging in different ways.
right.
What has been your experience in terms of maybe some of the things that are great to track on a semi-weekly or monthly basis in terms of, okay, these are the things that I know I need to work on, let's say managing my time better, maybe communicating better with my team, that it's going to help uh, an employee come to this performance review well armed and ready to have a productive conversation.
Yeah, so you talk about different time scales, right? Weekly, monthly, maybe we're talking about
Mhm.
quarterly as well. Um, and I like the approach of having more frequent reviews beyond just a yearly thing. I think a year is
Mhm.
way too long, uh, because people need that feedback. And so, but so if you're having one-on-one um, meetings on a more regular basis with your manager, if you're a manager, you're having those with your employees, I think that's helpful, whether that's weekly or biweekly or at very minimum monthly, to help make sure that you're doing things. So a few different things there is um, clarifying understanding of roles, responsibilities, their relative importance to the impact of the company and the team, and also where the time allocation is. So I actually have a template that I'll share with some of my clients when they need to have some of these conversations in helping them identify how they would split up the different responsibilities that they have, and then rank, up to four of them, rank 1 to 4, how they would see the relative importance, and then the time allocation. Okay, I'm spending 40% on this thing, but I'm also saying that's, and then 20% on each one of the rest, or maybe 5% on one of them, even though I'm saying that that's actually number two most important.
Mhm.
But I'm only spending 5% on that. Is that right? Is that appropriate? And then going into a conversation with managers or other stakeholders that are involved in your work, and then being able to use that as a conversation starter to say, this is my understanding of
Mhm.
what my roles and responsibilities are. Am I spending my time appropriately? Am I ranking them appropriately? Would you put different things on that plate, or take any of these away, so that I can be truly focused on the right things? And that's just a conversation piece, and it's more of a clarification or alignment conversation
And I
there.
think that goes back to what we were talking before about just like performance self reviews of yourself and where you spend your time with. I think that's important too. Like again, you're keeping track of what you're doing on a daily basis, maybe on a weekly and monthly basis as well, and looking back at how you spend the time. Is
Mhm.
that aligned with your responsibilities, with your priorities, and just be ready to present that to your manager. Like the manager is not really looking at those metrics consistently or at all, even in some companies, and is kind of your job and your responsibility
Mhm.
to make sure that you are spending the time on the things that you're supposed to be working on that's going to help you in your career kind of later on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And so, also recognizing that some metrics are very subjective.
Mhm.
They're going to be, they're not things that you can measure very objectively, which is hard for engineers. We love the data. We
Numbers.
love to like be able to see the numbers, but that's hard. And so we can ask some pretty open-ended questions about perceptions and things of people, not just our direct managers, but the other people that maybe our peers,
Mhm.
or other people that we work with, so we can get those perspectives on ways that perhaps we can make some adjustments and how we work and interact with them, and do things with them, and then also try and move towards not just them holding us accountable, but us being self accountable to them, that being proactive around, hey, how often should we check in? And sometimes the metric is the check in and the feelings that people have around, and it's the relationship around the working relationship that you've built with someone, which, you can't exactly put that on a 1 to 10 scale. Yeah, my relationship is, a 9.5 today with that person. It used to be a 7. Okay, great. And maybe you could, your own perception of that, but that's probably not going to be how you're going to have that conversation. But the way that they talk about what that working relationship looks like and any adjustments you can make is a way that you can continue to measure and stay accountable to how you're working with the different people that you work with.
Yeah, something that really stuck to me, and something that our company doesn't do, is having those more frequent kind of check-ins. Doesn't have to be like a formal
Mm-hmm.
6-month performance review. You can just leave that to the annual, more comprehensive one. But just having those more frequent check-ins every 6 months or even once a quarter
Mm-hmm.
for 10, 15 minutes. Doesn't have to be anything too long. And I personally tried to do that few months ago, maybe like 4 or 5 months ago, knowing that my performance review is coming up in a month or two,
Mm-hmm.
and talking about some of the just overall kind of things. So that's just such as like, how am I communicating with the project manager? Are the tasks that I'm working on really the most important things that I could be doing right now? Are they moving me forward in terms of like technical knowledge? Am I attending webinars, conferences that are really enhancing my value in the company? And just having those really simple check-ins kind of gives you a perspective of, and just helps you kind of flush out any roughness in terms of, I really like to have a call more often than an email, or I like to email
Mm-hmm.
more than a call. And just those little things that often go unnoticed when you're so busy trying to produce calculations or drawings or engineering work, that stepping back and spending 10, 15 minutes really help get the communication between the project manager, project engineer, or just anyone in the team kind of straight, and helps everyone kind of be on the same page.
Right, right. That's great. And
Um,
so what you
yeah, go
shared
ahead.
there is just an opportunity to be proactive in that,
Mhm,
not just reactive. That's just a principle in your career in general. I talked to so many engineers who have kind of gotten to this point where they recognize, and I did this for a lot of years too, where just kind of recognize that they just kind of let the career come to them,
mhm.
and those opportunities that came, they took them and they tried to do their best, but they weren't really proactive and seeking for learning opportunities, ways to challenge themselves, ways to get feedback from people on how to continue to improve their performance, and taking that more proactive approach is going to help really accelerate things inside your company, in your personal growth, and the other things as you move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's also important to um, kind of show the whoever is your manager or your supervisor what path in your career you really want to be taking, because otherwise they're going to be choosing
Mm-hmm.
for you if you don't say anything. Like, they have a plan for
Mm-hmm.
employees at the company, and that maybe they start, they work as a design engineer for a certain amount of time, maybe they move to a more technical position and they keep moving up in terms of responsibilities. But in reality, maybe you want to work as a design engineer for a period of time, then you want to pivot and maybe work in more of the business side of the company, or you want to work more on like the technical power of the company, or you want to approach engineering a different way. You have different ideas. So by being proactive and showing kind of what's the path you want to take, I
Mm-hmm.
think that way you can get something more valuable out of your career. Um,
Yeah, and that's great. Which, if you know that,
mhm,
talk to plenty of engineers, because
right.
engineers are so versatile and they see so many different paths that becomes a difficult process in and of
Hmm.
itself, is knowing where they want to go, and so therefore they just sort of let things, whatever path, oh, like whatever happens, like that's okay. Um, but it's not always necessarily, when we talk about the idea of career clarity, it's not always,
Hmm.
hey, I know exactly where I want to go in my career, what this end goal is, and this perfect step by step process. That's not what I'm talking about. A couple
Hmm.
different ways to look at it is just thinking like a North Star, like of values and ways you want to grow, ways you want to develop, and things like that, who you want to become, so that you can make sure that when opportunities come your way, they're they're helping you move that way. Um, we're also like a set of filters of things that are important to you as you take on new challenges and opportunities. Are they going to be help you learn the things you want to learn and grow
Hmm.
some of the skills you want to grow? And if something comes your way and you recognize, oh, that's not quite a fit, then you can use that as a filter. Okay, it doesn't quite pass through. Then you can appropriately say no, or look for a way to make an adjustment there. And then also, like we've talked about, be proactive in saying, I've identified the things that are important to me. How can we make some adjustments that could help me grow some of these other skills or take on some new things that would be beneficial for you personally, but also recognizing you need to put that in the context of the company and the team, how you can help them at the same time.
Right. I think that that ties well with what we were talking about before in terms of goals. Like it's important to have a goal, an ambitious goal. Here's what I want to be in 5, 10 years, and become the person that works towards that, that has the correct habits, that reviews their, that assess what they're doing, that are proactive in looking for those opportunities to help them get there. But at the end of the day, that's just like you said, a north star, something we're looking towards, but that can change in a certain year. With 2020 and 2021, I'm sure the north star for a lot of people change, and that's great because that helps them realize that what they were doing before wasn't truly what they wanted to be doing, and helps them kind of pivot and find new opportunities, new career challenges, new ways to improve themselves in their careers. And I think the role that mentors uh, play in this is super important, and something that I like about our company is we have a mentorship program for the first 2 years, kind of helping the new employees, guide them through the first few years of the company. More often than not is someone that I just graduated from school and is kind of trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out the career. So having someone that is helping you towards that is super important. Um, what is your perspective on mentorship? I don't think we need to go too deep into this, but just mentors in terms of how they help you review yourself and help you towards kind of preparing and challenge you towards those performance reviews at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, I'm a huge advocate for mentors. And mentors both inside and outside of your organization because
Hmm.
they can provide different perspectives and insights, but mentors can help you see things that you can't see. They also usually are further along their own path, and that doesn't mean you need to travel the same path,
Right.
but that means you can get that perspective from them and some of the experiences that they've had around there. And you want to be thinking about um, you know having mentorship programs that are more formal in companies is fabulous, but
Hmm.
can you do your own work, be proactive, and think about identifying people that you want to learn from that maybe not you might not connect in a formal program, but you recognize for one reason or another, hey, I think there's something I can learn from this person inside the company or maybe outside that you can have a conversation or continued conversations. And then you might also create uh, a differentiation with like a coach, which is sometimes the role that I play with people and the work that I
Hmm.
do, which their whole a mentor is sort of giving their time, giving perspectives, but they're
Hmm.
not necessarily fully invested in you. Where a coach is like, hey, your success is their success to some degree, and they want to do everything. They're extra. Um, trained and experienced in specifically helping people. That's just another, and but especially like external mentors or coaches can provide that insight that has nothing to do with your current role in your current organization
Hmm.
and is very much focused on you and what opportunities and giving you perspectives of how things work differently outside of your company and different perspectives, which a lot of times you get into a company or two and you're like, hey, I've learned how things work here, but I don't know how things work other places. And getting those perspectives are
Hmm.
extremely helpful so you can improve your work where you're at now, but also consider, oh, maybe something else might be helpful for you to get perspectives, grow in different ways, or try something new if you identify that that's in line with your values and goals that are important to you at this or maybe a later stage of your life.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point on mentors are not really coaches. It's two different concepts. And a mentor is someone that kind of supports you, maybe answers a few questions, and it's kind of there for you when you need them. A coach is someone that is really invested in your success, is helping you be strategic, is helping you move towards your goals and kind of help you identify those goals, and kind of helping you along the way in a way that is more strategic and more kind of goal oriented. So I think that's a really important distinction. And I'm gonna plug a couple of things. AC Mentor Match, I think, is a great program that they're trying to get a lot more people involved. So if you're a civil engineer, make sure you check it out. I'm gonna link in the description below, as well as a previous episode right at the beginning. I can't remember the number, maybe 12 or 13, with Fernando. We talk about career coaching as a civil engineer, kind of helping people and help them really accomplish the goal. So make sure you check that on the description and everything. But Jeff, do you have any last words you want to share with us? Any insight into some of the things you're working on right now, and any just last pieces of advice for everyone?
Yeah, just to kind of finish off on the mentor piece, I actually have a free resource that we can link to as well on like questions to ask mentors. So a lot of people go into mentor relationships and they're like, I don't even know what questions to ask or
Yeah.
what to do here. And so I actually created a resource a while back, because I did a whole training on this with my friend Pat Sweet a while back on mentors and growing mentor relationships. So I'll get that to you and we can link that
Yeah,
there.
definitely.
But certainly, we talked about a lot of things about personal reviews and getting some career clarity. The great resignation that we keep hearing about here. A lot of engineers, because they're so versatile, there's a lot of paths open to them, and they're thinking about what's next. What do I want to do? And so, any engineers that are looking to make an intentional career transition, find a new role, or make an adjustment inside or outside of their company, but they're not sure what to do or how to do that, are perfect fits for perhaps some of the work that I do in my engineering career accelerator program. And so people can see a little bit more about kind of the big picture of that process and what that looks like, around how to get more clarity, build a personal brand, move through that process with intention. They can go to www.engineeringcareeraccelerator.com. Certainly, I put out a lot of content on LinkedIn and the podcast that I host in partnership with the Engineering Management Institute at the Engineering Career Coach podcast. So people can kind of follow along there. Find me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect and have a conversation if I can help anyone.
Yeah, that's great. And a last piece there is mentors are great if you have a formal mentor relationship. I think those are super important. But having people that you follow on social media that you can just kind of send them a DM, ask them a question, just see what they're doing. I think that's also a great way of just finding mentors, even if they're not really officially a mentor to you. So yeah, thank you for coming to the podcast. I just have a couple more questions. Something that I've been trying to do a lot in the past couple of months, and something that I wish I had done or started a long while ago, was read a lot more books. So I'm just kind of interested to hear what kind of books are you reading right now, or maybe one or two books that really impacted you in your career.
Oh, well, this last year in 2021, I read more books than I've ever read in a year in my life. I set a big goal. I wanted to read 90, got to
Wow.
87, so I didn't quite get there, but it was a lot more than I'd ever read. Um, but a few things, and I actually just wrote an article about some of my favorites from the year. So this is easy on the mind. With respect to living a life of meaning and creating a fulfilling life and career, I would highly, highly recommend. This is a reread for me. A book called "How Will You Measure Your Life" by Clayton
Hmm.
Christensen. Most people might know him from some of the work he's done around the theory of disruption. He wrote a book called "The Innovator's Dilemma." But he was a Harvard Business School professional. He actually passed away about a couple years ago. But he and his co-authors use business theories and how they can apply to our personal lives and our careers,
Hmm.
developing relationships and also living lives of integrity. Make sure you stay out of jail. So a lot of good stuff. So that's one I would highly recommend. Um, Another one, uh, especially on the career path, and defining your career, is called "Designing Your Work Life" by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. around using some principles of design thinking to design a career and a life that you're excited about. So that if you do want to make some changes, you can think about how you can make adjustments in your current position, but also perhaps intentionally move through so that if you do leave, you leave well and you move on to something that's really going to be a good fit for you. We could talk
Yeah.
about book recommendations all day, but those are the two I think that are probably most relevant for our conversation today.
I'm very impressed by the number of books you read last year. I think maybe I'd read 12 books in the whole year, which was a very low number. But again, I'm trying to read more. So far, in the last couple of months, I'm averaging about a book a week, which is by far the most I have ever
Yeah,
read in my life. Which is,
yeah,
uh, I think, it's just so important. Just putting time into it. I
yeah.
think is something that it's been a high priority for me in
Reading 12
2022.
books, yeah, reading 12 books in a year is way more than I ever used to do.
Yeah.
And I've just been able to create some systems that have allowed me to increase that. I also recognize that sometimes I read probably too fast and went for the sake of finishing a book rather than getting
Hmm.
something out of it. So there's balances there. So, I mean, if you go from 0 to 1, that's progress. If you go from
Yeah.
5 to 10, that's progress. If especially not if you're just reading them, but doing something with that knowledge.
Yeah.
Because you can get all the knowledge in the world and take all the classes, but if you don't do anything with it, then what's the point? That's
Yeah.
where it turns into wisdom. So that's the balance that I'm trying to strike this year is not just getting through books, but also really letting them sink in and applying them me personally or finding ways to use those principles to share with other people as appropriate.
Yeah, and I started like to summarizing even the most important points of the book, just using
Perfect.
different systems like Readwise and Highland on Kindle and everything, which I'll probably talk in a future episode. But just yeah, applying what you learn in a book is more important than I actually finish a book and moving to the
Yeah.
next one. So super true. Last question I have for you, and I asked you this last time, so I'm curious to hear your answer. How that changed since we last talked? But how can we continue engineering our future?
I don't even know what I said last time, but um, I think I'm just a huge believer that engineers are a huge part of the future.
Hmm.
That we need engineers to be able to solve some of the most important problems in the world in terms of food, resources,
Hmm.
infrastructure, housing, and all sorts of other things. And the technologies, all the different disciplines of engineering are so critical. But it's also important to recognize the humans behind the technology. So as I work with a lot of people and maybe the more software things, we talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning and all these things, trying to automate a lot of stuff. Recognize that there's humans behind that, and the humans, the engineers who are creating those innovations, have a huge responsibility to do right by the world with the technologies and the infrastructure, the other things that we put out. And so, my hope is that you can be an engineer with intention and an integrity to build things that are going to benefit. Use these wonderful engineering skills that you have and are going to continue to build to benefit. The people that you love and the people in your community and the people in the world with what you put forth.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great answer. I'll have to look back. I'm not sure exactly what you said last time, but I think it was more related to kind of what we're talking about on that episode was imposter syndrome, kind of just overcoming those self doubts and those challenges, and just ensuring that us as engineers are a big piece of this war and knowing our worth and how we are changing millions of lives every day. So thank you, Jeff, so much for coming back to the podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation. I really enjoy following social media and seeing everything you do. Where can people connect with you and reach out if they have any further questions?
Yeah, so social media, LinkedIn's the best place. You can find me, Jeff Perry. And if you're listening here, you're probably connected to Lewis. And so if you can't find me, Lewis and I are connected. And you can do it that way. See my main website at www.morethan-engineering.com and see some of the resources there. And as I said earlier, the training resource around career transitions, and go find at www.engineeringcareeraccelerator.com. And I don't have it off the top of my head, but I'll get you that mentor question link as well, and people can find that in the description.
Yeah, definitely. We'll link all of that in the description. And again, thank you so much for going to the podcast. It was great talking to you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.